Hello, people. Good evening. Thank you, Matt, for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And today we have Matt Christiansen. He's a YouTuber for more than 3 years now. Gonna tell a little bit about his career and over 200,000 subs and almost 1,000 videos. It's a great career. Can you tell us a little bit about the origins of this story?
Oh, you want to? Well, how far back do you want to go? I mean, if you're,
Um, what about you tell us how long you are on YouTuber and a little bit on the other shows that people that normally follow you
well,
already,
I,
Beauty
I
and
actually,
Data?
I started YouTubing more or less by accident. I actually started in doing video game stuff, and this was back in like 2012. I used to play a lot of Call of Duty, like to a unhealthy degree, probably. I wasted a lot of time in my early and mid 20s. And but I'd play with my friends, and I was living out in California, away from all my friends and my family, and we'd play that game all the time. And if you've ever played online video games, especially shooters, there are always people yelling at you. It gets, it's just a lot of young dudes playing the game, and they want to. I don't know if I can swear on your show or not. They want to talk s. You know what I mean? Um, so I just decided one day, I was like, these encounters are pretty funny. Like weird random people just yelling at us because they lost the game. I should start recording these. And I started doing that, and it was just pure hobby. I mean, I was fresh out of college. I had my big kid job, quote unquote, and I just started posting those for fun, and that kind of got some traction. And eventually, I sort of fell off of that a little bit. It just I kind of grew out of it, I suppose. The content became harder to make for X amount of reasons, but and I just started talking about social stuff. I started talking about
So you
news.
started on Twitch? Is that what
No,
I
I
found
no.
recently?
Well, I have been on Twitch, but this was all on YouTube. I don't really Twitch, and I did it for a little while, but no, I've never got into gaming streaming really. And but I just started talking about social issues, politics. Back then, I considered myself, I was a progressive. I thought I was a consistent Democratic voter, and I started talking news and politics and all this, and this was around the time that like Trump was starting to rise, and a lot of things were changing politically, and I was kind of watching people on my so-called team, in my opinion, turn against the free speech issue, which kind of got the gears in my mind turning. And so over time, like it's weird that I went from people yelling at me on video games to like talking about serious politics, I guess. But that's how it happened, and there are still a few people hanging out from back in those old days. Like I can't believe any of the audience stuck around because it's such a weird transformation in content. But in terms of what you see today, like if you go to my channel today and you see me talking politics and you see the stream, that's been the formula for almost 4 years now, and I'm very happy with what I do, and hopefully I don't have to change anytime soon. Unfortunately, YouTube's not making it any easier. It's tough to make this kind of content these days, but it's still fun.
That's right. I actually follow. And what about the Beauty and the Beta? Did it start at the same time? How did that come
The
through?
way so I back when I was still doing video game stuff, I started doing a podcast. It was an existing podcast, and I joined with some other guys, and we would just talk about gaming, and we might sprinkle in some news and stuff. But I really enjoyed that kind of long form, like less edited, less scripted kind of thing. That fell apart, and I decided to leave that show. But I knew I still wanted to do like a long form show and like a live stream where people can hang out and chat, and it's not scripted, and we're kind of going through all the news, and it's just free flowing. And the thing is, I don't like doing that by myself though. Like I could do it by myself, but I like having someone to banter with. And I've always liked the dynamic of like male female back and forth. So I was kind of thinking about, for a long time, I was thinking about starting a show, but I needed the right person. My co-host Blonde just showed up in my Twitter DMs one day, and she's like, "Oh, she was also doing her own YouTube thing at the time," and she said, "Oh, hey, we should stream together." And I said, "Yeah, all right." So we just did a Google Hangout stream on my channel. You can still go back and see it. It's episode 0 actually, before it was a show, and people generally liked it. And so I told her, I was like, listen, I've been thinking about doing a long form kind of podcast show. Um, will you just show up every week on Sunday night? And we'll see if we can make a thing out of it. And it's every single Sunday with almost no exception. That has been the thing since 2016, and we're very proud of not just the show but the community that it is. And I mean, I got a message the other day. We were both blown away. There is now a wedding. There's a couple that is getting married after they met in our Discord server. So it's like we have listeners around the country meeting up, forming friendships. We've got people getting married. We've got friends forming. That's the stuff I never really pictured or envisioned or thought about, but it's very cool, and we're very proud of it.
That's really nice, actually.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool because it's not just the career. You actually create a community and has its own life.
The whole thing is one big accident, but it's definitely the best accident of my life. Like the whole thing was a gamble. All of this kind of happened when I used to have like a serious big kid job, I swear. But this all was starting to get a little traction at the very same time that job, like the writing was on the wall. I was under the management of a new person that I just didn't get along with. And sometimes life just kind of nudges you in a certain way. It's like, this is a risk, but that's what, if you don't take any risks in your life, why are you living at all, and it's worked out.
That's really nice. So the sections of the show or the Matt Christiansen where you make like kind of like 10 minutes videos talking about the news and giving more of your opinions and commentaries, and the Beauty and Beta that is long format, and you guys also get calls. When did that start, the calls?
So the Callin Show, we do a Callin Show on Wednesday nights too. And that's it's a little more niche because, like, I mean, admittedly, it's not prepared. Anyone can call in. We never know what kind of conversations we're going to get. So sometimes I'm done with that stream and I think, wow, that was really interesting what this person had to say, or that was really fun, or this person made this great joke, or whatever. And then sometimes it's like, that was the worst thing ever. Like last week we had like some self-avowed communist call in and like throw a bunch of just aggressive questioning at me to try to, thump his chest or something like that. Anyway, we still do it because I like to have that interaction with the audience. It's fun. And because it is one piece of content that doesn't have to be as prepped, like that show, we just sit down and we just do it. Every other thing I'm producing has got a lot of thought before it. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. This is just sit down and go. And we do that every Wednesday night. We actually didn't do it at the start. We didn't start doing it. I did one right around election. I think the first one I did was after the election of Trump in 2016, because I was still doing gaming streams and on Wednesday nights. And I thought, well, this is a pretty crazy night. Why don't I'll just set up a thing where people can call in. I'll just see what people want to say about Trump getting elected. Did it for a couple hours. It's pretty fun. And then, and Blonde was like, sure, why not? I'll join in too. And so we've been doing that almost as long now.
It is pretty fun. It's good to have this audience feedback. A lot of people just call to say they love the show. Other people just want to maybe, let's say, I don't know, would that be like people that are trying to strawman the free speech flag of the show? Like,
people like to troll.
So I want to come and say whatever I want. That there's
people like to troll. There's their own, like, there's inside. I talk about how this is such a community. There's so many different inside jokes that, like, if you just dive in right now, like if you were catching the stream and you don't regularly catch it, you'll probably hear all sorts of references or jokes that you don't necessarily get. And that's just a part of like the way the community has evolved. And from my perspective, like, we get the same thing in the chat. We get all kinds of repeat jokes at our expense or just memes that emerge. And I don't ever try to fight those, even if I am kind of annoyed by them, because the second you try to like tell people don't do that, guess what you're going to get? Way more, way more. So I just let those jokes and those memes flow and kind of rise and die on their own. That's my philosophy. And I think it's fun that way.
I think it's a great point, the thing about the free speech and this perspective of being more libertarian on the way that the bad speech will die, because that is what free speech is. Us that support free speech, we believe like even the bad speeches should have platform because people will look at those and will select. People will be able to sort the good of from the bad speeches,
Yeah.
and the free speeches will stay, and the bad speeches and bad ideas will just die, just like you said. And you don't actually need to fight to deplatform anybody unless it's not free speech. And that's one a little bit I try to bring here to the show, because the for example, I opened a Discord server recently, and it has very few people. And the first thing that happened was that, like, I asked friends to invite other people,
Hmm.
and some people came in like, "What are the rules?" And they saw there was no role yet, nobody administering or doing anything, and they just threw a bunch of Nazi slurs and stuff there. And I was like,
So they're
"What?"
testing you. Yeah,
Yeah, they
testing.
were testing, and I was like,
Yeah.
listen, the rule is free speech, but understand that calling for action and calling for violence is not free speech. That is different,
Yeah,
and that is so. Yeah,
sure. And I think on your own home too, like the your Discord server is akin to your home. You know, I mean, if you don't want certain things on there, that's fine. But to the point you're making, it's very different to say like, "Hey, listen, here's the rules of my home, my Discord server. Please don't do X, Y, and Z." Versus saying nobody should be able to say those things anywhere. I'm going to try to ban it, even if you want to make your own server and talk about it there. Those are
definitely.
very different things.
Yeah, this is
You know.
another thing, because there is the free speech and there is where you're talking about, because there is the public space and there is the private space. So I do think this Discord server as well, the YouTube channel itself, it is kind of your living room, so you can set your own rules, and there is a limit of free speech. I try to be totally free speech, and even people that sometimes come with like sour comments, I try
Mhm.
to debate them, like bring back to like, okay, I maybe you're trying to get attention, that's why you called me names at first, but what you really want to debate, and if you can go back to like a reasonable conversation, I'll let it stay. And even when people just like come to call names, I was like, okay, I'll leave it there, because everybody can see that this person is not here to debate, is here just to call me name. So, um, and I think it's a little bit on the Paul's law as well. Anything you say nowadays, there is someone that will be offended with it or will misunderstand you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in the increasing efforts for censorship, we act like offensiveness is in any way objectively definable. It is not. Like, what is offensive to you is necessarily different from what is offensive to me. And I guarantee there are some jokes that you find hilarious that I think are not at all funny, and vice versa. And the idea that we could set up some sort of rules whereby, like, here's the objective standard: what's offensive, what's funny, what's an acceptable joke, what's not. I mean, I think you're exactly right. The only line you can draw, broadly speaking, socially, legally, is just action and imminent call to action or crime. Of course, that, but there's got to be a connection to an action. It can't just be, oh, they said a naughty word or something like that.
But we
But
do need to talk about this more nowadays than before. What is funny, because now we have people that go to comedy stand-up shows and get offended with the joke and try to get the comedian fired.
yeah,
You
that's
know, like we
you
are
got to
at
be
this
a
level.
yeah, you got to be a real piece of crap to do that kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, especially that's the thing is like I mean, we both operate on YouTube. And I gather that we probably have a similar attitude here. Like, what do you do when you see videos that you don't like? You go, I'm assuming you probably go, "Ah, this isn't for me. I'm going to move on and watch something else."
Yeah.
Why this urge to this weird reaction when people see content they don't enjoy or they don't like or they think is even morally wrong for whatever reason, instead of just moving on with their lives, they have this impulse to say, no, no one else should be able to consume this. I don't get that. I mean, even all the like communists and all the crazy people on YouTube that I disagree with, honestly, on somewhat of a moral level. Like, I think some of their worldviews are in fact immoral, but I don't have this impulse to silence their speech. I think their arguments are bad and they'll lose.
Yeah. I had this conversation with Peter Boghossian and James Linson recently, because of their books and
Mm.
studies. And we actually mentioned this here, that we don't want to even the platform, the cancel culture advocates, because there
Oh,
are
that's
many.
interesting.
Because I actually have talked to people here that think cancel culture is not a thing. It is not real. I don't know if you have heard. There is a. What
Well,
do
I
you
guess
think about
I
cancel culture?
I
Have
guess
you
I'd have to hear
suffered
their. Oh yeah,
from?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we basically, well, um, primarily for me, the most difficult obstacle is YouTube itself. So I've had all kinds of like anybody in the alternative news and politics sphere, perhaps you've experienced this, but up till about a year ago, YouTube had more of a merit-based algorithm system. That is to say, if your video was performing well numerically, it's probably going to get pushed to their recommendations. It's going to catch a little viral steam and it's going to do well. Now, channels like mine are backed into basically a dark corner of YouTube in which there is no referred traffic ever. I'm very thankful to have the audience that I do. Um, but YouTube is making it basically impossible through their system to attract new eyes. And that's very discouraging. It's like back in the day, you always knew um, whether your channel was big or small. If you put out something that was really good, that caught a lot of eyes, it's going to catch that wave and you have a chance to really make a name for yourself. These days, if you're in this sphere and your channel has whatever it is they're marking these channels with, does not matter how good the content is. It will just be disappeared except for the people who already know about it. And that's very discouraging. We have had minimal efforts of people trying to like I haven't had the full cancel culture effort of say people trying to sever me from like my website host or people trying to get me like I have not been banned outright off of any platforms. Blonde has. So they haven't come for me yet necessarily. I always joke that like I'm always waiting for that hit piece. Everybody gets hit pieces but me. Nobody's ever writing these hit pieces in the BuzzFeeds and the Guardians of the world. I'm missing out on that. But YouTube has made it very, very difficult for people who want to operate in this sphere. That's one aspect of it, and it's a major bummer. And as far I don't know how people would deny cancel culture as a broad social phenomenon. I mean, it seems observable almost on a weekly basis. I'd have to hear their case, but
It's interesting, but I heard from a comedian that I interviewed that he was fired for a joke that he threw in the middle of the stand-up comedy, and he actually supports. He would say that, oh no, cancel culture, in his opinion, is more like personal selection. But then is when I try to bring to him in the own interview that I do think there is a nuance in between. I don't like the show, walk away and
right,
don't watch it anymore, from me going after this person's boss and tell him
exactly.
like, did you know he made this joke in the show and I want him to get fired? That is pretty different, and that is a little bit on the nuance that I think there is on the reactionary try new censorship. And it scares me because I think we have people alive nowadays, and we all heard so closely historically about dictatorship, censorship. So for me, it's a little bit blowing mind that we have to go through all this free speech and censorship conversation again online, because I
Yeah.
think it just applies to life and applies online. We have noticed that censorship is bad, so why are we still arguing to do it?
Well, the difficulty, I think, is exactly what you've identified. It's not. I'm not worried about government in the U.S. at least. I'm not worried
Yeah.
about government censorship. It's not the government who's going to silence my internet voice. It's people like Susan at YouTube, Jack at Twitter, maybe Mark at Facebook. Those are the people who control the main public squares of the internet. And I say that metaphorically with recognition that these are in fact private companies, but that's the difficulty. And that's why I continue to struggle with how to resolve this. Because on the one hand, I do think that philosophically protecting all speech is not just the right thing to do in terms of recognizing the rights of people, but it's the path to human progress, like you identified earlier. That's how the good ideas and the bad ones get sorted out. And people being able to speak freely, even wildly unpopular opinions, is what gives rise, ultimately, to the best ideas and the coolest stuff and the best development. On the other hand, much like we were saying earlier with the Discord server, Facebook is Mark's home. YouTube is Susan's home. Twitter is Jack's home. I really dislike the idea of using government force or anyone's force to go in and say, you will operate this in this way. You will be compelled to do that. I've been in an ideal world, I would love for free speech competitors to basically make them go the way of MySpace. That said, and I'm using alternative video platforms, and they're all doing the best they can. I'm not taking shots at them, and I'm trying to use my content to prop them up the best I can. But just the infrastructure necessary to compete with YouTube is so monumental. It is so costly that, you know, at some level, at some point, I probably have to get real, get a little more practical on this front, because I mean, I'll post a video to another platform. On YouTube, it might take 2 minutes to process. On these other platforms, it might take 2 hours or even a full day, depending. They just don't have the power that YouTube has. And of all the things that I hate about YouTube presently, there's nothing out there that's faster to just have a video that's on your computer and have it ready to watch in a couple minutes time. So I still don't have it ironed out in my head of how to solve these problems. I'm trying to weather the storm right now. I'm trying to weather the storm, and I'm trying to prop up alternatives as much as I can in the hope that that free speech becomes cool again. That I would love some courage on the part of people like Susan and Jack, and like, oh, I'm sorry you saw a video you don't like. I'm sorry you saw a tweet you don't like. Why don't you mute it? I mean, that's the thing is, the answer is not top-down censorship. It's maximum control for the user. So if you're on Twitter and you don't like this person, they're annoying you, block, mute, done. You're on YouTube, you don't like this person's videos, mute, unsubscribe, don't look at them. The answer is not ban them from the platform.
Definitely. And mainly because one of the things I think it behaves different. Besides, I said, like, we have talked about free speech and should apply the same way free speech and censorship from real life to online life. We know people don't behave the same. So like when they do have no face, they behave very different. They talk different, and they and that is something I believe, you know, like those big CEOs of these companies are afraid of. But I think what they are missing actually is to be methodologically honest. It's like, so if you use a method and you say like, this is going to be my method of applying, you have to be the same to everyone. And that's the problem, because they want to just stop part, you know, like the censorship, when the censorship comes like from one side only. And that's actually my fear of like, oh no, this is just online. But when people believe that I feel offended and then I can shut these people down, I think that is the problem of philosophically englobe everybody, and then these people reach politics and government, and then it comes like, I don't think the authoritarian position stops online. You know, I think it actually spreads and it can reach politics, and that's, I think, why it's so important. And you should talk more about this, because the conversation online just makes people believe more into echo chambers and safe spaces and seclude themselves in those communities. And maybe YouTube is trying to seclude people, like really apart those niches so they don't need to clash. But what we actually have talked so much in academics with those writers, it's with writers that I have talked to, it's how important is to have diversity of ideas, and not just the diversity of people. You know, like we are hitting this so much recently about the diversity, but you go to the campuses, mainly school people that go do more like podcasts and interviews on the schools, they see how people are like the I don't like to use the political terms to say leftist or like, but it is a little bit more on the left side to be more authoritarian, to be more uh, defending the minorities against free speech, some kind of a little bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's a shame, man. I mean, I'm just about 10 years removed from American college campuses now, and I went to a progressive school in a lefty place, and I was a political science kid, and but to this day, I don't know the politics of my professors, and I that's the one of all my views that have shifted a little bit in the last X amount of years. Free speech is not one. That's actually the catalyst to my shift. Like I've always been uh, uh, a full supporter of free speech to the maximum extent that the Supreme Court has defined it, under our First Amendment. And the thing that's frustrating, as you mentioned earlier, like the argument that drives me nuts is these cancel culture people and these people who are trying to get other people banned or trying to get them severed from whatever contracts they may have or whatever, punish them however they can. They say, "Oh, the First Amendment just protects you from the government. Doesn't mean that I can't go and meddle with whatever." Okay, but then why are you citing the First Amendment at all? These people cite the First Amendment as though they think it's a good thing, but the question is then why? If it's not a good thing for the government to come after you and put duct tape over your mouth, why is it good for other forces to do that? Because the First Amendment is based on a philosophy. It's based on a theory that when everyone's free to speak, not only does that recognize people's rights, but it produces the best ideas. If you grant that philosophy, it makes no sense for a private actor to do the duct taping either. It doesn't matter whether it's government or corporate power or just a person on the street who's intent on forcing his way upon everybody else. I've always found that to be philosophically inconsistent. That's why I actually have the most respect for people who are like, no, I'm just pro censorship. Okay. I mean, it's kind of the same thing. We're talking a lot about guns and stuff in the context of what's going on in Virginia now. But that's why I have the most respect for the people who are like, no, I'm just anti-Second Amendment. Okay, that's fine. I mean, if your position is things should be banned, I disagree, but at least you're taking an honest stance. These people are saying, no, I'm pro free speech, but, or I'm pro Second Amendment, but, like, there's no buts. Sorry, you're either in or you're out.
Definitely. And that is the thing that I'm not sure if is dishonest or if it's hypocritical. If it's like if they do that without noticing their own cognitive dissonance, or if it's completely like, no, free speech is good for me, but not for my enemies. Whoever disagrees with me, I don't support.
Well, and
like,
that's the thing is you don't measure your commitment to principle by how you apply it to yourself. You measure your commitment to principle in how you apply it to others. And if you're talking in the context of speech, you don't measure your commitment to the principle of free speech by looking at, I don't know, the children's books or something like that, or fashion magazines at the grocery store. Very easy things. You look at your commitment as it applies to speech that you loathe, speech that you absolutely hate, that you think is wrong on every level, either morally or intellectually. And that's, if you can't stand for that, then you don't actually stand for the principle.
I mute myself. Oh, sorry. I thought I muted myself before, but it's just because it's noisy here. So I'm going to cut this part. So yeah, no, one of the things that I have seen a lot and that actually bothers me, it is pretty much about the cancel culture. It's like, I want you to be shut, and whoever is on my side is okay, can say whatever I want. And it's so like you said, it's dishonest, the methodology they apply for, like, oh no, I'm for free speech, but only the speech that I agree. And
yeah, and you actually see that inconsistent application of principle as it applies to violence now these days, which actually is even worse. I mean,
to say the Antifa.
and I don't think that either side has a monopoly on violence right now. There are, I mean, certainly I talk more about Antifa violence than other types of violence. I don't know. I'm not doing a tally of like here's how much they do versus here's how much these people do. But my point is, if you throw political violence at me, I don't care if I agree with the politics or not. It's wrong. Whereas there are other people, there are plenty of people that look at that and say, yeah, but they're fighting Nazis. They're fighting bad people, so it's fine. I mean, even like Chris Cuomo on CNN was saying that. This isn't fringe. These aren't fringe people. This is mainstream American politics. People saying, well, you can't say that like fighting Nazis is necessarily bad, that punching Nazis is a bad thing. Because after all, they're Nazis. They're bad people. They should be punched. Okay, but the problem then is whoever you point at and say Nazi is then subject to violence. And there's no objective standard here. It's just who you don't like. Nope, I think you got I can't hear you at least. I think you're muted. Oh, there we go.
No, my phone is working weirdly. Sorry. Yeah, no, this is definitely a great problem. And Antifa was the next step, because you talk a lot about Antifa. I've seen, rewatching your most recent videos. I saw the video about some Antifa getting arrested, and the Antifa itself, it's like, I don't see other solution than to try to talk to these people and try to show them, through epistemological conversations, if that is even possible, because they're more violent. We know they have like these violent tendencies.
Yeah.
But to show them their incoherences, like, how can you do that? What do you believe it is a Nazi, and what is their methods? I've seen one. What is the name of that lady? She's famous on Felarca.
Felarca,
yeah. Felarca on Tucker Carlson was hilarious, because she cannot get her hypocrisy and her own dissonance. Her cognitive dissonance, like, yeah, we're shutting down Nazis because they're violent people. It's like, and what do you use against people that you don't like? She has been violent, being caught on camera and everything. And that's don't ring the bell for them. It's ridiculous.
Well, and at least from my viewing experience, I rarely see that type of Antifa person actually go and defend their ideas in a one-on-one type conversation. Usually it's just they're in the mob, they're yelling stuff from the mob, they're taking violent action in the mob, and they find their security in the mob. And that's why you almost never, like, in an ideal world, absolutely, you hash this out, you try to have these conversations, and you try to arrive at the truth, and maybe they'll see the contradictions that you're describing. But when they maintain a mob in that way, and the mob is loosely violent, there's just no way to create that type of intellectual engagement. And I think that's by design. I think there's a reason that they're not having those sorts of conversations.
It's actually scary and dangerous. We have some examples, like Indigo was inside and got attacked. So anytime they can just turn against you if they think you're just infiltrated, or if you do not really, it's like almost a Puritanism process. If you don't agree with them 100%, you're gonna be attacked.
And that's how these mobs always function. You better conform or face the wrath. Yeah.
And I think that is very different from the other people. Like, I don't want to put left or right, but I see a lot of people falling in a funnel into centrists, almost being pushed, actually. Not like, because some people are like, no, I'm kind of right, I'm kind of left. But if you're not totally, they will take you as an enemy of both sides and push you. I have been pushed to the center. I can't say I'm left, right? Because and now it's actually worse, because then you have more enemies. You don't, before, when you're left or when you're right, you're only enemy of one side. But when you fall in the middle, they both attack you. They both hate you. So
I try to avoid those labels for the same reason. Like, I don't view myself as playing for a team or a tribe. I'm certainly playing for principles and values. But as far as like the pure authoritarianism, that is trying to control specifically your thoughts, that's not the exclusive property of the left or the right. Like, I can envision a time right now, I think in the US in particular, the left is clearly the authoritarian group. But I can envision a time in the future where the right wing kind of returns to some of those tendencies. And we talk about, I mean, there's a certain segment of our audience that is, I'm not even mischaracterizing them. They are authoritarian right wingers. And I don't say that to smear them. That's their viewpoint. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we talk about stuff all the time, and they kind of disagree with, I try to stick up for freedom. They disagree that that's good because they think they want to lead people to live a good life. They have that's what everyone thinks they're doing, is I'm leading you to live a good life. Yeah, all right. But it often gets twisted. The point is, that's probably my main hesitation of like, oh, I'm clearly on the conservative team or the right wing team. There are a lot of values alignments right now, but I don't think that it would be impossible for those values alignments to shift once again.
Yeah. I have talked about how I feel that this push to the center or push away from the left, because it has happened to Rubin and other celebrities that felt like I was in the left and they called me, no, you're not left enough, and kick
Yeah, you
you
don't
out.
pass the purity test. Yeah.
Don't pass the purity test. Yeah.
Oh.
And maybe what actually should be talked more is like, because we always talk about left and right and forget that the political compass is actually X and Y, and there is the libertarian authoritarian axis that we all see. What people, there are some theories of the horseshoe
Yeah, the
horse,
horseshoe
like
theory.
that. Yeah, that the left and right that remain today, the extremes are still authoritarian. That is the problem. That's why some people are refusing left and right
I definitely see some parallels emerge. Absolutely. And I try to be honest and oppose them when I think that they are at odds with the principles of liberty too. And of course they'll come at me and they'll say that, I'm participating in the destruction of society or whatever else. But that's kind of my point, is like freedom is always messy. Freedom is the messiest way to the best prosperity the world has ever seen. Everybody's always got some theory about how wouldn't it be great if some benevolent, perfect ruler just controlled everything and told everyone how to behave, and then we'll just reach utopia in the end. It never really works out that way. Freedom is messy. It means people will make poor choices. It means that some people will trip and fall on their face. But it also means that that people are free to innovate, that they're free to develop, that they're free to think, and that how do you think so many garage operations in the United States turn into billion-dollar companies? It's because someone was free to think for himself and maximize his own labor and his own property to the maximum possible extent. So, these days, admittedly, though, there's a lot of challenges to that. What are the full extents of freedom that you'll defend? We're always talking about like drag queen story hour on our stream, because there's like there's one of those every week, and there's so many things involving like parents giving hormone treatments to transgender kids and all these sorts of things that are on the very far fringes of what people should be allowed to do with their freedom and their liberty, that create a lot of interesting conversation. But specifically in the context of your thought and your own labor, kind of like what we're talking here, hey man, you do you, and I wish you all the success in the world, because that's what's made the most prosperous societies the world's ever seen.
It is true. Unhappily, the people have mistaken, or it's very confusing nowadays, those concepts of equality and the equality that the left wants it's the equality of results.
Yeah.
And that is something that it cannot be achieved with freedom. And and unhappily, they don't see the mistake of it. It's like, oh no, we can. There is what is the other term that I really don't like, is the affirmative action.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't see, but it's spreading through the politics the same way that censorship kind of seems to become a term that is banalized or changing meanings depend on which group is talking about. And one thing that I actually think you mentioned before is like everybody just wants the best. And this is something that I talked to Peter Boghossian on his book, How to Have Impossible Conversations, because it is one thing on the first rules. We have to remember every time we're debating someone that doesn't matter left or right, they both, what I believe, is like I make a charitable assumption that both just want the best to everyone. And that's
I
what we
try
always
to
have to
I try to uphold that too. I want to assume good intentions until proven otherwise. But man, some people are making it really tough these days, admittedly. But yes, I agree. I think that just comes down to like treat people the way you would want to be treated. And the people who have changed my mind in the world assumed my good intentions. They didn't come to me and think, "Oh, this guy's an idiot. He doesn't know anything. Let's just call him an idiot, and that'll shame him into agreeing with us." No, these are people who said, "Hey, what do you think about this? Oh, that's interesting. Do you think that conflict? You said this earlier. How do you square that? How do you align your principles this way?" Those are the people who got the gears in my mind thinking. And then you start thinking, oh, well, maybe I'm not consistent on that. Maybe I am wrong on this. The people who were kind to me and who were respectful of me, those are the ones who changed my mind. And those are the people responsible for the perspective that I have today, not the people who yelled at me.
Definitely. The polarization just makes the conversations impossible, and there's no other way to change people's minds. If you're just yelling, they just gonna go walk away, and the only way is like, please try to make me understand your side. Maybe
Yeah.
I can actually change my mind, but we need to be calm. We need to have reasonable conversations, and I think that's what me, you, and a lot of people that I try to talk to or actually honestly trying to do. Uh, I actually have talked a little bit about the troll with James Lindsay because he actually loves on Twitter troll, and in the book he talks about like how trolls are don't take them serious. But I was like, sometimes the troll is just the first trigger, like it's the trigger for the attention, and then you bring it to a reasonable debate. That's fine.
Yeah,
But
don't
you
underestimate
cannot
the
just
power of
troll all
memes
the
and
time.
stuff, man. I couldn't believe memes arguably won an election last time around.
Definitely.
There's a lot of power to that sort of thing. Artful trolling, even if it's at my expense, I will always appreciate. The kind of trolling I don't appreciate is people who are like throwing around threats or they're not clever. Like troll me cleverly, even if I don't like you, I'll appreciate the cleverness. That's the distinction there.
Definitely. So politically, you would say, do you put yourself in the spectrum? Have you done some political compass? Where do you fall?
Yeah, the first time I took the compass, it's like before my transition, if you want to call it that way. Uh, I was square in the middle of the libertarian left box, which I now see as a total nonsense box, but that's where I was. Because I used to basically believe culturally people should be left to do what they want. Like uh, things like marriage equality, things like just there shouldn't be government distinction based on
Yeah.
who you are. That was kind of my perspective. However, I also used to believe that government had a lot more power to provide opportunity in areas, economic opportunity in areas where it may be lacking. I used to believe very naively in my younger years that most everyone will maximize an opportunity thrown their way. It's just that some people lack opportunity. That is not true. There are a lot of people who you could throw infinite opportunity at, and they will not seize it. Without changing them, you'll have to change them to seize opportunity. So over time, my views on economics have shifted significantly, and I haven't because I wasn't able to square. Listen, if I think people should be left free to live as they choose culturally, why should we interfere with their labor and their property? Why should we take their stuff through taxation and give it to other people and all this? So that's shifted me to right about in the center of the libertarian right box over the last 4 years time or so.
I see. Yeah. I'm still on that square on the left bottom, but I'm very close to the libertarian, very down, very
Sorry, I
low.
didn't mean to call it the nonsense box. You can live there. That's fine.
uh, no, I actually, but that is a long time ago that I have tried my political compass. I'm about to do it, a new one, and I'm maybe I'll make a video of doing it so I can talk about each one of the questions, and there's so much to talk. I think
Sure.
it's really hard to take that little point and just put everybody there and try to compare when there's so much in, like into making into going through the political compass, and that you cannot assume anything from just seeing a dot on the graphic. So
Sure.
that's
I
why I would like to make more ex- explanatory in that way if I do it.
I will have to hop off very shortly, but I do have just a couple more minutes if you like.
It's okay. Yeah, let's try. Let's try to talk a little bit more on the. I have a bunch of things because I have gone through a lot of your videos. So, um, I want to talk a little bit on the gun control, but I
Okay.
cannot not talk about the impeachment. So please, a little bit on the end. Let's try.
Okay. Well, we can be quick on each
So
one then.
yeah, one of the things I wanted to point is like I think you try to go a little bit on the news and try to talk about it, and that is very difficult.
Mhm.
I appreciate very much everybody that talks about news and comments on news, because when I decided to make my channel, I was like, I don't want to be pressured by the news. Like, oh, the news is getting old, so I need to do it fast. And I think that is one of the most difficult things on keeping up with the news nowadays. And
Yes and no. I mean, I'm such a creature of habit, and I'm such a routine person that like I have to do the thing I'm supposed to do at the time I'm supposed to do it. So I've been doing this for so many like 3 years now that like this is when I make a video, this is when I make a
you love a
stream.
routine.
That like yeah, that whatever's in to me it's not a hurried process because I that's just the time that I do it. So whatever's relevant at that time, I'll talk about it.
I have difficulty on turning on the camera, so that's why it
Yeah.
stops me. If
It,
I
you know,
would
it
like,
never does.
oh, I'm
It
gonna
does. It
turn on the
never
camera and just talk to it, it would be easy.
I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure, you've got the experience too. It never does feel normal to just sit by yourself and talk into a camera. I've been doing it for years now. It's still, I have these moments of, I don't know, self-awareness or whatever, where it just, it's like, what the hell am I doing? I'm talking to a machine, and somehow
And you're the one that
this is
produces
my life.
everything by yourself.
Yeah, I don't have staff. I would like to. I mean, it'd be great if I could, but of course, finances are uncertain in Susan's world. So I'm in, like I said, I'm in survival mode. But yeah, in the future, it'd be nice to have a little assistance. I don't currently. I'm doing all my own stuff.
I have tried to do it by myself too. So guns control. Sorry, gun control.
Hmm.
Uh, I saw a recent video, just trying to bring from your recent video so I can put cards here in the video. Is the mainstream media narrative? You were talking against it because you mentioned the Chicago shooting just before turning here,
Yeah.
and I really like that because there are a lot of mainstream narratives that whenever the case doesn't fit, it just falls into like
Oh,
nobody
and they try
talks
to
about.
twist. I mean, that's one thing that my perspective has changed a lot on, is guns. I used to just not know that much. And when you don't know that much about either firearms or the current law that exists, it is it's very easy, but it's also very understandable to say, listen, I don't like when people get shot. There's got to like we should just make this not happen anymore. And like I said, I was persuaded by people who were kind to me and tried to explain this issue to me. And the more I learned about firearms and the law around firearms, the more I started to see that like at some level we have a lot of laws, some of which I can get on board with, some of which I think are gross overreaches. But the point is, we have progressively had more and more of them, yet evil doers still do evil things.
Yeah,
Okay, and over time, like part of it is just becoming an adult too. Like now that I'm a little older, I'll be building a family soon. It's not even just about me anymore. It's like all it takes is one crazy person who decides they want to harm me or decides they want to harm my family. And of course I'll call the police if that happens. And I big fan of the police. I hope they get here fast. They're doing good work. But they can't be here immediately. Someone could be in my home threatening my life or my family's life. And it's up to me to respond to that. So that's kind of changed my perspective. But to your point on the media narrative, yeah, I mean that particular instance was just, oh, there was a mass shooting in Chicago, but nobody cares because it happens all the time in Chicago, and they already have all the laws, so we're just not going to talk about that one. But the worst twisting was this case out of Texas. I'm sure you probably saw the footage. Guy just pulls out a shotgun out of nowhere, he shoots two people in the church. Trained man downs him in 5 seconds flat, and minimizes and de-escalates the situation. And everybody out there, myself included, is saying, good. That's what I want to see. And I want that guy to be my neighbor in case somebody ever comes to threaten my neighborhood or my church like this. I want that guy, or God willing, I hope I could be that guy if that circumstance presented itself to me. I have nothing but admiration for a guy who can perform like that under pressure. Good for him.
Yeah.
But that case, like, I don't know how you look at that case and say anything other than, I guess armed citizens do have their place. I'm very glad he was there so that 10 more people weren't shot.
Yeah.
Instead, the narrative was like, oh, this man is actually highly qualified. He's really skilled. And so like he should be allowed to have this, but not you, because you're just a bumbling doofus who can't be trusted. It's like, we were going through it on the stream. It was just baffling to see that this case would be twisted into a way of saying, yeah, but he's twisted into a gun control narrative, basically. You couldn't do this because you're not specialized like him.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the point, is like, yeah, he's highly trained. Wouldn't it be great if we all were? Like, wouldn't it be great if everyone could do what he just did? Yeah. That would be fantastic.
Or at least everyone that wants, because I do support, like, it's funny because when they say like, no, I'm against gun control, it's not that I'm against gun control. One of the things that I have talked about is like, nowadays it's so polarized that like, are you gun control or are you against? It's like, no, I am for some gun control, but I don't want the gun control to impede people to get a way to defend themselves. And that's my position, you know.
My position is generally that
it should not be making difficult for people that want to defend themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I joke on the show all the time, like all gun laws are unconstitutional, and I kind of half believe that. I will say I don't have a problem with prohibiting felons, prohibiting serious criminals from firearm possession. And we already have that. And we've had that in the United States for forever, since dating back to like the 60s. Yet the crimes still happen. But the point is there. I think that's consistent.
The point of the criminals are not gonna. The criminals don't care about your banning laws.
Yeah.
You banning gun laws. They will still get the guns, and that's the point. I think in Brazil we went through this. We did not ban the guns, but most of the people that that want to be protected by the police and want to be defended, but would believe that all guns are just bad, or extra risk in our house. They gave the guns away, and we have nowadays in Brazil, culturally, the bandits know or believe nobody has guns. So they break into the house, nobody's protected. People very unsafe because police takes a while to show up, and sometimes it's too late. And I came to Canada with the idea of like, if I would stay longer in Brazil, I would totally get a gun, get trained and get a gun. And
especially
not feel unsafe. The feeling of like, I'm gonna die defenseless, it's like defense is terrible.
That's for me. Like when I watched the Christchurch shooting footage, the actual live stream the guy put out, I tend to watch things like that because I want to know like what evil exists in the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the footage, and I won't describe it vividly, but
I've seen the next one. I watched both. Yeah.
But you remember, you surely saw people who were completely helpless begging for their lives. Yeah. And my whole perspective, and maybe we share this, is I refuse to ever be in that position. Like, I'm not saying that I don't. It's quite possible someone could kill me with a gun. Good for them. Point is, I will not beg for my life before them. Sorry, you're going to have to kill me, or I will do what I can to eliminate you for threatening everybody else. And I think that that's a totally reasonable position for people to have. As far as like felons,
a human one.
as far as like felons, not having guns, the only way I square that is, as far as our Constitution says, your rights aren't deprived without due process of law. If you've been through due process of law and found to be a serious criminal, then I'm fine with reducing your rights. That's basically my standard. Everything else is a constitutional infringement, in my opinion.
That's really nice. Okay, let's close with the hottest topic is the impeachment. So I saw recently Nancy Pelosi video and you talking a little bit on the incoherences of the process. And I would not say, let's not try to say like it all democratic, but a little bit on the Democratic
Yes,
Party agenda. Like
they're
what
nutty,
they
man.
spend their time in the government these last years doing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
It's sad.
I mean, I impeach this whole thing is made up, in my opinion. I think to be as fair as possible, is it possible that the president had like some kind of loosely unethical behavior? Yeah, probably. But I don't think any different than any other president we've ever had. This has been maximized for political impact. And the number one thing I would point to, as I was discussing in that video, the impeachment charges are not, in fact, even crimes. They're just made up, in addition to a million other nonsense, contradictory pieces of this process that I just find to be nothing but political theater. So yeah, we'll see this thing die, and but maybe not. I mean, because we were talking about on the stream, like they're not going to let this die and then quit. The mission of the Democratic Party is undermining and ultimately, ideally, removal of this elected president. So now we see new stories breaking this week as they're transferring over the articles to the Senate for trial. There's all sorts of angles they might try to resurrect this thing in the House and basically make it the infinite impeachment. We'll just keep going on and on and on. And the thing is, like I don't agree with really anything in terms of the core of the Democratic Party. But I understand how and why people do, and I understand how and why people would vote for them. But if you're out there and you're a loyal Democratic voter like I used to be, what has this Democratic Congress done for you personally? Like I'm kind of a tacit Trump supporter. Like I'll probably vote for him. He bugs me in a lot of ways, but there are also ways that he's made my life personally better that I can explain to you. The first of which would be my pocketbook's in better shape because of him. That's great. A lot of people can point to that. For these Democrats, it's like you sent them to Congress to do things like you care about climate change, I bet. You want them to do something about that. Guess what? They haven't. You care about income inequality, I bet. You want them to do something about that. Guess what? They haven't. You care about health care access. Nothing done on that front. All they've done is try to undo an election. I really would, honestly, I don't even speak rhetorically. I should probably talk to more of my Democratic voting friends, and I just want to hear from them. What has this Democratic Congress done to benefit your life personally? Name a thing. Or is it all just political theater?
Apparently it became just like a fight of left, right, or Democrats and Republicans to kick Trump out.
And it's terrible. It's terrible for the country. We talk about this on the stream all the time too, because let's say terrible. Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or whoever gets elected in 2020, let's say that happens. I mean, you think the Republican Congress, if that's what he has, if that's what you have, is going to work with them honestly? No, it's going to be the same thing in reverse. All we're going to get is a gigantic federal government that is hyper-partisan, that we all pay tax money to investigate itself. That's what we're going to get, and that's a disaster. Why would you want to be extorted for that purpose?
I think the worst thing is what already has happened. For example, like these last 3 years talking and doing things, just trying to kick Trump out. This is government. This is public money running under the bridge. And they are, like you said, they are doing nothing. They are just trying to aim and target that guy, and the things could be done. And not only that, I think it's for their own sake. Like, of course, there is this idea of like, we would just start a big fight, but even the impeachment process, I watched the hearings and I was like, I can't believe we're spending so much time, so much money going down the drain with this circus because it was ridiculous. It was like, okay, I was expecting an impeachment process hearing would be something reasonable and that we would talk about the evidence and facts and not
It's just a guy heard a
about
guy
a
say something.
guy talking about someone else that is there to say how Trump should be impeached. And listen, this person is so honest. This person is such a good mom and dad, whatever. It's like,
It's still
wow,
their
I thought I was
opinion. Yeah.
watching Bachelor or some type
Yeah.
of, Big Brother Brazil, like whatever.
Yeah.
What is this? Is talking about people's lives and their opinions instead of facts and evidence. It was a shame.
Yeah, well,
I told you I was
we'll
going
get
to
plenty more of
close
that.
with impeachment, but I just wanted to point one more thing. It is the last one. That is the vulture culture. What is this with the victimization and these attention seekers? We had like one of the videos that I wanted to point because for me was new was the Erica Thomas that
Oh
it
yeah,
is tagged on your YouTube channel, and that's why I could not let it pass by
that's
without
right.
talking about. But
Yeah.
also you have mentioned Jussi Smollett and Jessica or Jonathan Yaniv.
Oh yeah,
Eh,
yeah.
yeah, and Jessica or Jonathan, whatever, it's pretty close to here. I'm in BC, so he is already going
And
around this area.
I'm
You're trying to
told now that
find saloons that don't wax balls.
I'm told now it's possible there might be assault charges on Jessica Yaniv. So that would be a good thing if that happened. Yeah, I don't know how this has happened, but certainly victim. I just call them victim bucks on our stream. It's a currency.
It's trending.
It's all. I think it all stems from basically the Marxist theory of oppressors and the oppressed, and for that theory to function, there always has to be an oppressor and oppressed. And you see that because that is necessary for that theory to hold any water, even as people become less and less oppressed over time, they have to manufacture the ways in which they are oppressed to uphold the theory or the worldview. I think it's basically a function of that. Like how can I manufacture myself into a victim in one way or another? And because a certain segment of society buys into that worldview or that theory, they kind of have to go along with it too. I think that's why that happens. It's like,
It's a
well,
little
if I
bit
were
like
to,
business.
yeah, like
Like
if I were to
they
deny
make so much
this,
of the narrative is so big that it kind of calls demands some examples and people start creating those.
yeah, it's like if your entire worldview is based on a certain premise being true, you're just going to kind of trick yourself into believing that premise is unfalsifiably true. No evidence could ever change your mind because the consequence of questioning that premise would require you to fundamentally change the way you look at the world. And that's not easy to do.
No.
I wish everyone would, I'm not even saying I wish everyone would agree with me. I mean, that'd be great, sure. But what I really wish is that people would have a principled grounding in their worldview. The people I respect the most are not the people who I agree with 100%. They're the people who articulate what their values are and defend them consistently. I appreciate that. But that's not easy to do. And I think
No.
that's why the option is to be like, well, I just have to maintain this is true because the consequence of it not being true is like my entire world is flipped upside down. So we'll go with it.
Yeah, I think what is missing nowadays is a little bit on the view on the individualist to understand we all know how every one of us, each one of us is unique, but the people is still like on standing on like I'm not gonna follow this person if I don't agree 100%. It's like there is nobody that is 100%
Yeah,
representative
yeah.
of
I
you.
always get a kick out of
That's
that.
my position. It's like I'm not looking for someone that actually like that's not what makes me follow or unfollow anybody.
Sure. I frequently
Like
get emails that are written that way, and I'm not taking shots at people. I just always get a kick out of it. They're kind and they're well meaning, and so but they always say, "Oh, I listen. I don't agree with everything you say, but it's like, well, yeah. I mean, why would
I
you agree with
understand. I
everything I
would
say?
expect that.
I mean, yeah, it's but yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Any prospective emailers who hear this,
it's fantastic.
you don't
Yeah,
have to agree
but yeah,
with
I
me.
think we need to talk a little bit to people. Like, do you really think you're gonna find someone 100% that agree with you everything? Probably not even your main father, your husband, your wife, your
Yeah.
kids. There's no such a person in the world. So stop that Puritanism fight or seeking for this perfect person to represent you. You will
Sure.
never find.
All right. I'm getting
Anyways,
dinner
it was
time text
really
messages. So
great. Sorry. Yeah.
that's all right.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And I'm sorry to hold you a little bit over the time. And thank you very much. People, please go follow Matt Christiansen on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. Build
Thanks.
and Beta. Thank you very much for your work. Keep it up. And
Sure. Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
thank you.